There's not one, but two major breaking news stories out there right now that when people see them, it's going to upend their world. If they stop and really absorb using thought, not emotion, what they really mean, it'll completely change their point of view. One will do this to the left, and one will do this to the right. It's going to completely blow your mind. Stick around. You're definitely going to want to hear this. Cognitive dissonance. It's why people get upset when their beliefs are challenged. And these two articles challenge what these two groups have thought was true. And they're tied together, which is absolutely the most amazing thing to see, that you can use these two articles that are so closely tied together to completely change the minds of two very disparate groups of people. Cognitive dissonance is a mental conflict that occurs when beliefs are contradicted by new information. This conflict activates areas of the brain involved in personal identity and emotional response to threats. The brain's alarms go off when a person feels threatened on a deeply personal and emotional level, causing them to shut down and disregard any rational evidence that contradicts what they previously regarded as truth. This is what happens when you are out there just going from one emotion to the next, believing that you're thinking. Now, the biggest, most common thing that people have had experience with cognitive dissonance is when they catch a partner with someone else. How many people have had that friend that said, looking back now, we've separated, we got a divorce, and moved on. All of the signs were there, and I completely missed them. How many people have heard this? That is cognitive dissonance. That is what happens when you exist in a purely emotional state. You do not have the ability to comprehend thought. One of our articles today has to do with, now that was just an example, we're not going to talk about that today. Nielsen ratings have now decided that a certain very small group of people are going to have to deal with reality in a way that they don't want to. Psychological operations 101. They are everywhere. And if you don't know the 24 cognitive biases or the 24 logical fallacies and have them ingrained in your mind to look for in the media, you will fall victim. You will fall prey. We cover these over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. $1 per month. That's it. Even less if you sign up for an entire year. Fully refundable first 90 days. No questions asked. We can partner with Vimeo. We can take the gloves off. We can talk about things like adult here. Of course, at YouTube, we have to be very PG-13. Over there, not so much. And there are folks who have gone over there, looked at the content, and it's been too much for them. And I've had to issue refunds. That's fine. Give it a shot. It's only $1. Believe me, you will definitely want that information. Here's our first stop. Now, trans women banned from female athletic competitions. The World Athletics Council says it will continue to maintain fairness for women in sports. Transgender people will no longer be able to compete in female sports competitions. The World Athletics Council has ruled from April on, any athlete who has been through male puberty, no matter what, will not be allowed to compete in women's track and field events, regardless of their current hormone levels. Quote, the council has agreed to exclude male or female transgender athletes who have been through male puberty from female world ranking competitions from March 31 this year, said Sebastian Coe, the head of the organization, at a press conference on Thursday. Quote, many believe there's insufficient evidence that trans women do not retain advantage over biological women and want more evidence that any physical advantages have been ameliorated before they are willing to consider an option for inclusion into the female category. We continue to take the view that we must maintain fairness for female athletes above all other considerations. So now we have the World Athletic Council standing with Florida. Let me say that again. We have Florida standing with the World Athletics Council. Florida Maquis, anything that has to do with the globe or world or anything, they're the enemy. Are they the enemy? Are they really the enemy? You see many people would scratch their heads and go, yeah, globalism is the problem. Right now, Washington, D.C. is the problem. You see all this stuff that floats around with all this trans stuff and all the woke nonsense? You see, that's not getting traction around the world. It gets traction in Washington, D.C. and in Silicon Valley and with all of the platforms. But that's not the whole world. And now, here's reality proving that. You want more proof? You want more proof? You don't think so? GLAAD, G-L-A-A-D report warns alarming number of LGBTQ TV shows and characters will disappear next year. You see, this is the key. Here's the problem. Nielsen ratings. All these shows, all these woke shows, go woke, go broke. They're not bringing in the viewership. And when they don't bring in the viewership, they don't get as many eyeballs in front of ads. A lot of people come to these videos, oh, I hate all the ads. The ads are the key. The ads are the key. Advertisers are not going to pay top ad rates for shows that only aim at a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of the population. And now facts are proving this. Amongst that tiny group, these shows were wildly popular. But there's such a tiny group. The report noted 175 characters, 29% won't be returning. Almost a third. Almost a third just in 1 year. And I know people are like, well, you can't really trust Fox. This is TV Line has this article. And this is Days Digital. A third of queer characters will disappear from TV in the next year. See, it's over. Now, how does this all tie in together? You see, we have the right who thinks the globe is the big problem when really Washington, D.C. and America is. And then here on the right, or here on the left, a bunch of woke folks over on the left thought if they put a whole bunch of these characters into TV shows, that it would cause greater acceptance. Well, the jury's in. It hasn't. In fact, it's had a huge backlash. And now the money is proving it. They're just not making the money. They thought, well, for sure, we're going to put all this out. And eventually when people just get used to it, they'll completely look through it and everybody will be accepted. It doesn't work that way. Why? Well, Judeo-Christian ethics is what this country was founded on. And those of you in that community, in the LGBTQ, whatever community out there listening right now, what if I told you that a lot of the things that you have lobbied for are Judeo-Christian protections? They're not secular. Many aren't educated as to why married couples and matrimony aren't secular terms. They're Judeo-Christian terms. And here's the part of the Bible that talks about this. The Pharisees also came to him, Jesus, testing him and saying to him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? And he answered and said unto them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become, pay attention here, one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no man separate. Now this is the basis. This is the basis, this and the Constitution, of a great many laws. For example, Fifth Amendment says no man may be compelled to be a witness against himself or testify against himself. Well, guess what? If you have a spouse, the Judeo-Christian Bible says that man and woman are one flesh. Meaning that your wife can't testify against you, can't be compelled to testify against you, and you can't be compelled to testify against her. Why? Because it's a form of testifying against yourself. Because it's one, the Bible recognizes this as one flesh. And you can look this up under spousal privilege. Now, this spousal privilege only exists in the U.S., Great Britain, common law, England, Wales, Scotland, and Australia. This is not a global concept of spousal privilege. It's a Judeo-Christian thing. How many of you knew this? How many of you knew the reason you can file income taxes jointly is because the government recognizes married couples as one flesh because of the teachings of the Bible in Matthew? and the word matrimony. You see, you can be married, but not have gone through matrimony. A lot of people don't know that. Wait a minute. Lord Maki, marriage and matrimony, same thing. No, they're not. No, they're not. Matrimony is the joining of two people together for the express purpose of creating children. Look up the etymology of the word matra, M-A-T-R-I, and monium. Hold on, wrong picture. Here it is, Old French. Mater, mother, monium, obligation, mother obligation. That's where matrimony comes from. And patrimony. Patrimony is basically an inheritance from one's father, or an endowment, but it's an exchange. You see, this has to occur. So you can have a civil union all you want, and you can technically get a marriage if you want to, but it's not holy matrimony unless a baby occurs from it. This is why way back in medieval times, once the marriage occurred, once the ritual was done and the vows were given, all this, they put a bed in the middle of the town square. And guess what happened on that bed? You see, the entire town had to witness the consummation. This is about making babies. That's what matrimony is. And as you know, of course, not all marriages can make babies. So now we have something to really tick off the left about all their characters getting pulled off TV because they're not selling the ad time. They're not getting enough eyeballs in front of because the writing is terrible, by the way. I've seen some of these shows they're talking about that are getting canceled. It's just, they're horrible. They think they can just virtue signal their way through it, and that's just not how it works. And on the right, over on the right, all of you anti-globalists might want to take a breather. Globalists are going to destroy America. Well, in this particular case, the World Athletics Council has a lot more in common with Florida than it does the other 49 states. So I'll leave that there. So those of you out there that think this idea of making babies, is some horrible thing, last I checked, there was only one way babies got made. So I'll let you figure that out all on your own. And one final thing. How many of you have known somebody that have had this happen to them, and after this happened to them, they caught their spouse, that after that they were never the same? They had other relationships, but there was never the ability to, quote unquote, love at that deep level ever again, because of the amount of pain that cognitive dissonance gives you. It is horrible, because you have this idea that you're part of one thing, and then you find out you're not. And then you thought something was something, and it's not something now. It changes people. It absolutely changes people. If you want to get read in on psyops and understand how the brain works, and why living emotionally is a giant mousetrap, and why even when you go into relationships, you have to use thought, not just emotion. I'm not saying, just be a complete stoicist your whole life, but this is what you have to lead with. It can't just be how you feel. I mean, that'll come along. You won't be able to avoid it at some point. But in your operating daily lives, psyops, more important than beans, bolts, or band-aids. And I'll say it again. Your ability to control your mind and maintain control of your mind and understand what's happening in your mind during a survival situation is way more important than beans, bullets, or band-aids. $1 per month. Would love to have you over there. And like I said, not for you. Fully refundable. First 90 days. God bless. Have a great weekend. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.